Hi everyone, welcome to session number 4 of Manual Testing Project Training. Just to start with few housekeeping rules. So if you have any questions regarding the session, please use the Q&A section because then I will be able to make sure that I am not missing anyone's question and I can answer all the questions. Recording of this session will be accessible. So this session is being recorded right now. So once we are done with our session, I will upload it to the YouTube channel. And the Facebook group, I have just given the link to the Facebook group as well, just in case if someone is attending this session who is not already part of the group. Okay, so a recap of course outline. So far we have covered Agile, the project overview, test planning, and today will be the module number 4, which will be test design. So we will be focusing more on test design of the project today. Today's agenda will include the sprint. So as we did sprint planning session in our last session. So now the sprint has already started. So we will review that where we are in the current sprint and what will be the testing activities. Then we will also go through what are the considerations when we are thinking about the test environment, how to set it up, then a brief overview of Git, what it is and how we use it, then test case, how to write test cases, and at the end I would like to introduce the test case management tool, which is Zephyr. Okay, so just to remind you of the team that so that you don't forget that if I'm talking about the names, then who are the team members. So it's better to just remind you all that who's there in the team. Okay, so this is also familiar, the wireframe of our parking calculator application, which we will be testing. If you notice now, I have also included the link as well. So you can go to this link. I will also show you the application, but I have mentioned the link as well so that later on as well, you can go and you can have a look. So usually when we are doing test designing at that time, not all the time, like the complete application is not available, but right now, just for the sake of writing good test cases, I wanted to give you the link as well so that in the coming week, you can do some practice with writing the test cases. Okay, so this is the Scrum structure we went through in our first session. So to go through that, how the entire Scrum works. And so far, we have done the product backlog. In the last session, we went through product backlog, then we did sprint planning, and then from the product backlog, we picked few tickets, we moved it into the sprint, we started the sprint, and we also had a look at the sprint board as well. And that sprint board is also known as sprint backlog. So if you hear the term sprint backlog, it's nothing else but the sprint board, which of course we will go through in a while. So now I have just highlighted this section because this is the section where we are right now. So we have, our sprint has started. We are in a 2-week sprint, and we also have a daily stand-up. And what is daily stand-up? That every morning for 10 to 15 minutes, all the team members will gather together and they will tell that what they have done yesterday, what they will do today, and if there are any blockers which is likely to prevent them to do something they are aiming to do today or tomorrow. So it should be very brief. Everyone gets their turn to update regarding their tasks, and it shouldn't be more than 15 minutes. So like for a small team, I think the team size which we have, 10 minutes are more than enough, but for us, for a bigger team, 15 minutes should be max, not more than that. So this is where we are right now. Okay, test environment setup. So this is something I wanted to first of all let you know that what are the things we need to consider. When we start the sprint, everyone in the team, they have different tasks and they start working on them immediately. We are seeing this project from testing perspective. So we need to see that as a tester now, what are our tasks, what we need to do. Of course, we will be writing our test cases, but at the same time, there were a few things which we thought about during sprint planning, that which we also discussed with the test manager as well, that how to while the test planning, that how the test data will be set up. Do we already have the test environment? If not, then what kind of environment we need to set up, etc. So that's why I just wanted to give you an overview that now this is the time where a tester have already thought about the test environment, test data, but this is the time tester need to make sure that the test environment is available and it is set up the way he or she wanted. Okay, so now the test environment, it's really essential for testing any product, because a tester can play around with the application and test various scenarios without the risk of making any change in production. Okay, so let's say that we have an application in production. For this scenario, for this application, this is a brand new application. So of course there is nothing in the production yet, but just imagine that there is an application in production which live customers are using. And at the same point, we want to do some testing. So of course, we will never do testing in the same environment as production, because of course, when we are testing, we are playing around. We are doing experiments. We are trying different scenarios. We are trying to break the application. So we will never do it on a production environment, because then, of course, the impact will be seen by the live customers as well. And the same goes for the developers as well, that if developers, they are developing, they are using their own environment, and we are using the same environment for testing, then every time any new developer is merging their code, they are deploying something for themselves, then maybe the testing which we have done will be interrupted. So this setting up a test environment, a good environment, is very challenging. So that's why this is a key part to consider when you are testing any kind of application, that you should make sure that the test environment is there. So just to give you an example, that let's say if there is a dev environment, so the URL should be something like that. It can be something like that, like dev.parkingcalc.com. So this URL is nothing but another server for development, and at the back end there can be a development database. Then there can be a test environment, and the URL for the test environment can be test.parkingcalc.com. So it would be another server for test, backing up with a test database. And then finally, in the prod environment, the production environment, the URL can be this, and there would be a separate database behind. Okay, so now why we need separate databases? Okay, so server, we understand that we need different environments, different servers for each stage: dev, test, prod. But why we need different databases? Why we just can't have one database and just link that one database to all the servers? And the reason is because the data would be different. So the schema of the database would be the same in all of them. It would be just like a copy on let's say if there's a production database, then there would be a copy on test and dev with different data, but the same schema. When I talk about schema, it would be that all the processes, the procedures, and the tables, etc., everything would be the same, but the data would be different. And the reason is that if we are working on production, then of course the production will have live data of customers, and due to security reasons, we can't play around with live data. So what we do, that we take the replica of the production, and then we create some dummy data against that in test and dev to do our testing. In this case, because it is a brand new application, it's not being used in production yet. So we'll start with dev database. So we will create a database over here. Then we will create a copy of that in test and production. So the data in each database will be different. So for example, if we are using any application which has login details and those login details are coming from database, then maybe those login details in dev database would be different from then in test and production. So that's how the data needs to be different. So if we are doing testing, then we need to be we need to make sure that our test data is set up in our test database, because that's where we will be using our this database will be used and this server will be used for our testing. So for this project, I have just taken 3 environments. We will be assuming that we have a dev environment where the development would be done. We have a test environment where we will test, and there is a production environment. There can be many other environments as well. Within test environment as well, it can be subcategorized as like system testing. Then it can be another environment for UAT, for user acceptance testing. They can be a staging environment as well. So they can be like many environments, but right now I didn't want to make it complex. So just to make you understand about how there are different environments, we are just using one test environment right now. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are already aware of this concept GIT, which is mostly used when we are doing, implementing the concept of continuous integration and continuous deployment. And mostly it's used for agile projects. And it is a kind of a version control system. So I will not go in much detail because of course, if I go in much detail, then that will be completely like a standalone project on its own. So just to let you know, you should know that it's a version control system. It lets us to manage releases, develop new features, fix bugs, and save our work with maximum efficiency. And I would strongly recommend that you go and have a look more about Git if you are not already using it. So I have mentioned a link over here. So there are different products for the Git repository as well, which are using the Git workflow. So Atlassian, like we are using JIRA, which is also a product of Atlassian. They also have a Git product, which is known as Bitbucket. There are many others as well. There is GitHub as well. So it doesn't matter that which product you are, which tool you are using, because the workflow, as long as it's a Git workflow, it would be similar. So, and it's customizable. Every company, every organization, they have modified it based on their own requirements. But this link has good tutorials for beginners. So I would highly recommend that you go there and have a look at it in detail so that you can understand. Okay, so for this project, I wanted to show you that which Git workflow we will be using. Of course, we will be doing most of the testing at the front end, but the reason I wanted to give you an overview of the test environment and the Git workflow is so that you understand the entire process, that how testing is done on different environments, how the database is connected to the server, and also this workflow, that how a feature which is developed, how it proceeds gradually to production. What are the different steps? So so right now we have 2 developers in our team. We have Sophie and we have Sanjay. So let's say that they both have divided 2 features. So when in this sprint we are doing valet parking. So in valet parking, just pretend that one, like Sophie has taken one user story and she is developing that. Sanjay has taken another user story and he is developing that. So what they both will do, they are working on different features. And right now where they are working on their local machines. Right, so they are working on their local machines, on their features, and they have a local database. So right now they are not in dev environment, they are doing all the work in their local machine in a local environment and linked to a local database. Okay, After that, when they both are done, then of course they both have to merge their work on another branch. So over here in Git, we have branches. So these are all branches, like we have feature branch, develop branch, release branch, master branch. Okay. So they are working on different branches, feature branches, which is on their local machine. So once they have done the work, then of course we have to merge it, because maybe when those things are merged, and when we say about merge over here, we are talking about the concept of integration testing, which we did earlier in the foundation course. So they have to merge it to develop branch to make sure that the features which they have developed independently, when they are merged together, there are no conflicts. So what they do is that when they are done with the features, they will deploy it to the develop branch. And this develop branch at the back end is basically mapped with dev environment. So now let's see, this is to make you understand that how branches will be associated with the different environments. So the develop branch is mapped with the dev environment. This is where all the work which developers have done individually will be merged. And if there is any conflict, then that conflict will be resolved over here. Then when this is done and that feature is, or the number of features are ready to be deployed for testing, then we have to move it to the test environment. And our test environment is basically mapped with the release branch. So this is the release branch where it is deployed for testing. This is the place where we as testers will do all of our testing. And at the back end, it's mapped with the test environment and the test database. We do all our testing over here, and we can do UAT over here as well. If we have another UAT environment, then of course that will be another stage. But as I said, that for now, we are not doing any UAT branch. We are just doing one test environment. So it means that we are doing our testing over here, all kind of testing over here at the end, UAT as well. And when everything is signed off, we are happy, then we are moving the same build to master branch, which is mapped to our production environment. So I hope you understand this entire flow. And if you notice that we are seeing that what's the progress of all these branches in a sprint. So this is a sprint. This is the entire sprint of 2 weeks. We started with planning. We will be ending in review. So what it shows is that when we start a sprint, we start every sprint fresh with new features to work on, and then gradually through the sprint it progresses from the feature branch to develop branch, then release branch, and at the end when it's the review time, which means that by that time all the features, all the stories which we have planned in that sprint, those features are done, they are ready for review. And that's the time when you review in the sprint. At the end of the sprint, then if everyone is happy, then we can move it to master branch, which is ready for production. So if there are any questions regarding this workflow, then yeah, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah, we can proceed further. Okay, no questions. So we can go to the next topic. Okay, so the next one we'll go through is a test case. So what is a test case? So test cases are what we use to assess the quality of a product. So we have a feature and a functionality, or a functionality which we'll be testing. And then this feature and functionality needs to be tested against a requirement. That's what testing is, that we make sure that the feature or functionality which is developed is based on the requirement, the initial requirement. And test cases are something which actually links the functionality and the requirement. Test cases make sure that the feature or the functionality is built based on the initial requirement. Okay, so just to give you an idea of a test case template, what are the features, what are the main things? There can be many other things as well apart from that, but the main things which you should be considering adding when you are writing a test case, there has to be a test case ID. So this test case ID, it depends that what kind of naming convention you are using. Like for example, I have written TC1, which means that the first test case ID would be TC1, then TC2, TC3, TC4, or you can use any other prefix, but yes, it has to be consistent. Whatever the naming convention you are agreeing with the team, it has to be consistently used throughout the project. Okay, so now test case ID. So these are the things, it depends that whether you are using a spreadsheet or you are using a tool. And if you're using a tool, then maybe a few things from this list you don't need to worry about because those will be auto-generated. So you don't need to worry about those. But let's say if you don't have any tool, you are just using a spreadsheet, then yes, these would be good things to add in your test case spreadsheet. So it's like a kind of template for you. Then the next would be title, that what would be the title of that that test case. Then description. So title is nothing but a summary, and then in description you write more details about it, that what are you expecting in that test case, what that test case will do. The next is preconditions. So what are preconditions? So preconditions is that maybe there are a few test cases where there are no preconditions, so you will just leave that blank. But there can be few test cases before that you need to have some set of conditions which needs to be met first. For example, if you are using, if there is a login feature you are testing, and at that time for that login is different for admin, different for different kind of users, then the preconditions would be that yes, now this is for admin or this is for user, or maybe when they are logged in as admin, then they will see a different screen. So the test cases, the precondition might be then that you need to be logged in as an admin user in order to see these further screens. So they are like different preconditions. So that needs to be specified. Otherwise, the test case may be very ambiguous. Next would be test status, that what is the status of this test. Of course, it can be when you write a test case, it can be new. Maybe you have the process of the test case is being reviewed either by anyone in the team or maybe your test manager, etc. So what's the test status? It can be new, in review, reviewed, and then executed, etc. That what's the status, because now when you will go in the execution phase, then the same test case spreadsheet will be extended for the for test execution as well. Like you will add more columns, and then you will also add what's the test state, like passed, fail, etc., and also what were the actual results. Okay, the next one is requirement ID. So we have learned a lot about the traceability in foundation level certification. And this is very, very important because right now we are talking about a test case template. So when we are writing test cases, then our each and every test case, it needs to be mapped, it needs to be traced to a requirement, so that we can make sure that we have done the entire coverage. We have covered all the requirements through our test cases. So whatever there must be a requirement ID. If we have a user story, then of course we can map it with that. So every test case needs to be mapped with a requirement. Then comes the test steps. So we need to write the test steps of each test case, telling the user what to do. All the actions need to be there. Then it's test data. On each test step, if there is any data which the tester needs to input, then we can add that in the test data step. Then it's expected result. For each test step, there would be an expected result because test step is an action. So for every action, there can be a result which is expected. And when we execute our test, then we compare the actual result with this expected result. If they are same, then we mark that test as passed, otherwise it's failed. And again, we can also add that this test case was created by, so the author's name and also what was the date. Again, if we are using a tool, then these things will be automatically captured. We don't need to write those specifically. Okay, so now we know that what is the structure of a test case. We have also gone through different things which needs to be in a test case, but now what we need to write an effective test case. Okay, so first of all, let's go through that why we need an effective test case. What are the benefits of writing a test case? Okay, so when we are writing the test case, so what actually we are doing, that we are identifying the gaps in the design as early as possible. And we have learned that as the testing, if it's beginning as early as possible, it's good because we can identify the gaps. Same goes for the test cases. If we are writing the test cases now at this point, see in the sprint, it's not developed yet. That feature is not developed yet, whatever we are testing in this sprint. So this means that at this point we are writing the test cases. So while writing the test cases, we can identify any gaps which we might have missed during sprint planning session. We might have missed discussing about it, but writing the test cases, we come around any detail. So we can always go back with the team and discuss that, okay, we didn't think about this, and how to fix this issue or how to make the changes. So because it's not developed yet, then still it's a good time to identify any kind of gaps in the design. Okay, so test cases also help us to find the issues with usability. A tester is testing or looking at an application from user's perspective. So this is the time where maybe the prototype is ready, or maybe the UI is ready, the functionality is still being added at the back end, but you have an UI to play around with. So maybe you can identify few usability issues from user's perspective, which earlier maybe you didn't think of, or maybe because you didn't had any application, a physical application to play around with, you were not aware of that. So when you're writing test cases, you're also going through the application, then it's easy to find usability issues. Okay, another advantage of test cases is that, let's say that you have written all the test cases, and then there are, after 2 or 3 months, new testers are hired in the team. So test cases would be a good learning point for them as well, to learn the application. Because if you have written all the steps very clearly in the test cases, it will be easier for them to follow the test and execute that, and also learn the application as well. So that's why when you are writing the test cases, you need to make sure that the test cases are very easy to follow and easy to maintain, etc. as well. Okay, so now let's talk about few things which are very, very crucial when we are writing an effective test case. Okay, so first one is strong title. Okay, so title is summary of our test case, and a good test case, it should always start with a strong title. So as a best practice, it's good to name the test case along with the same module which you are testing. Like for example, if we are if right now we are testing our epic, which is valet parking. So maybe we can start our summary of the test case, something like that. The title would be valet parking, and then whatever the summary would be of that, because that will help us later on. Maybe if we are if we want to group our test cases, then maybe that title, that prefix will help us, and it will be easier to see that, okay, now these test cases are for valet parking, etc. Though if you're using a tool, it would be easier to map as well, but still it's better to use a strong title so that that can act as another identifier, and it's easy to differentiate between different test cases. Okay, and it should be very precise and short, not like maybe one liner or so, because the details will be covered in the description, which is the next step. So just like title, we also need a strong description. So now, what is the description? What we write in the description? The description should tell the tester that what they are going to test. So if we are testing something, we have something in our mind, yes, it has to be something between the title and the test steps. So description would not be as detailed as test steps and not as short as the title. So description would be that what we are going to test. And sometimes we can also write the details like test environment, that in which test environment this test case will be carried out, and if we want to do test data, if there's not a separate field of test data, then we can also write the test data details in the description. The description one can be very, it can vary. It depends that how you are writing your test cases, and description field is something which you can use as per your requirements. If you don't have a separate test data field, then you can definitely write your test data over here as well. And even if you don't have a separate field for preconditions, then you can also write preconditions in the description field. So it depends at how you are using. So its main purpose is that it should be easy to read, and it should be able to communicate the high level goal of your test. Then the next is preconditions, including preconditions wherever required. Okay, so we already went through that what are conditions, preconditions, and these are very important because these must be met prior to the test case being executed. So maybe this information can include which page the user should start on, because when we are following the steps, maybe it says that, okay, click on this button, but we don't know that at that time where the user should be. So in preconditions, it can be that go to overview page. So that would be a precondition, and from there onwards, you can start executing your test steps. Okay, so the next one then is test steps should be clear. Okay, so now test cases, it needs to be very simple. We need to keep it very simple, and test steps should be in a way that when you're writing them, just think about that if someone else is executing this test, not you, because of course you know that, you know about it, you are writing the test case, but just think that if someone else is executing, following your test steps, will they be able to execute the test case or not? So if you have this thought in your mind, then you will know that how simple the test steps should be. Okay, so because maybe at one point you are not there to execute, and maybe another tester is doing it, or maybe a developer is executing the test case, or a BA is executing your test cases. So it's better to write it in a way that it's not only for you, it's for others as well. So that's why this is perhaps the most important part of the test case. It needs to be very clear, very concise, but still we shouldn't be leaving out any details which are necessary. So we have to write the test case so that anyone can go in and execute the test. The next one is expected result should always be included. Okay, so the purpose of writing the test case is that when we are actually testing the application, we are comparing the actual result with something which we were expecting. So that's why expected results needs to be captured. This is not optional, this is a mandatory field, because expected result field, it tells us that that what a tester should experience as a result of the test steps. So test steps are actions, and what are the results of those actions? That's what needs to be mentioned in the expected result field. And this is how a tester determines that whether a test case is failed or passed. And the last point is reusable. So this is very important, that we need to write test cases in a way that they can be reused as well, because it then reduces the effort tremendously. So a good test case is always reusable. It provides long-term value, because think about long-term, about that how it can brings value, add value to your team. So when writing a test case, just keep this in mind, and because later on you can save a lot of time, and when you're using a lot of different tools as well. So what you can do, you can write, like I can give you an example. For example, there is a login test case, and you have written a test case only for login. All you do is that you enter the information, username and password, and click. And then there are other test cases for which it's mandatory that you are already logged in. So what you can do, you can always add the steps from your login one. You can just copy that and you can paste it in the beginning and then start the rest of the things. So now what you are doing, you have written the login test case once, but you are reusing it multiple times wherever the user needs to do something for which it's mandatory to be logged in first. So this is how you are reusing. So this is like one example. So whenever you are writing test cases, try to think of scenarios that, okay, that this is a scenario which I will be using a lot. So maybe you can write it in a way that wherever that test case can be reused, you can do that. Okay, tools for writing test cases. So there are different ways that you can write the test cases. So there is no right or wrong way in it, that how you plan to document your test cases. It completely depends on your organization, that how you have agreed to write the test cases. It can be written in a spreadsheet as well, and that's what I think at any point in our life, in our experience, we have used spreadsheet. But now there are many tools as well that can help it can help to make the process of writing the test case more efficient and more effective as well. But still I know that there are many teams out there, especially small companies, who don't want to invest in testing tools and they want to start with spreadsheets, so they still opt in for this approach. So this is quite flexible, that how you want to write the test cases. You can create your own processes and own method of writing and tracking the test cases. So it all depends that how, as a team, you decide in your company to agree on writing the test cases. Okay, if we are using a tool then which is dedicated to write and execute the test cases, then you can write your test cases, you can execute, and then you can also get a report as well on the results, and then you can collaborate with your team throughout every step of the process. So that's the advantage of using a tool. And for the purpose of this project, we will be using a tool which is known as Zephyr. So there are like lots of test management tools, but we will be using this tool known as Zephyr. Okay, so now I will take you to the JIRA instance. So before that, if you have any questions here, please let me know. Meanwhile, I will just share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see my JIRA instance now. Okay, Denmark is asking, is Zephyr same in X-ray in JIRA? Okay, Denmark, I'm not sure. What is X-ray? Is this a tool as well? Okay, we can have a quick look. That's fine. Let's see. X-ray in JIRA. Okay, so this is also another plugin for test management. Okay, so there are many plugins in JIRA, and plugins, I mean that there are different tools like X-ray, you mentioned, this is one of them. Then there is another one known as TestRail. Then there is Q-Test. Then there is Zephyr. So X-ray seems to be like a separate test management tool, but it will do the same what we are trying to do with Zephyr. So yeah, that's right. Okay, so is there anything else? All right. So right now I have already installed Zephyr, but I can show you that if you want to install Zephyr, then there is a free trial for 30 days. So you can go to Atlassian. So Zephyr is a tool by SmartPeer, but it has a plugin for JIRA. So you can go to Atlassian Marketplace. You can just search Zephyr for JIRA and you will be taken to this page. It is a paid tool, but it is free for 30 days. So because we are using a cloud version for server as well, it's free for 30 days, but we are using the cloud version. So I installed this one. So maybe you can download this and you can play around. The mistake I did was that I downloaded it, I think two weeks before, 2 or 3 weeks before, because I wanted to make sure that this is compatible with our project and we have everything in place. So that's why I installed it earlier before I could share it with you. And now I think the issue is that because it's free only for 30 days, so it might not last till the end of our project. So we'll see that how to manage that. But if you want to go ahead, you can download this cloud version, and what you will see is that it will show up here, just like you can see Zephyr. It will be shown within your project, and also it will, when you will create any task, it will be shown here as well as a test case. Because earlier, if you have already created an account for JIRA, then you wouldn't see this test case thing over here, an issue type of test case. This comes only when you install JIRA as well. So you can go ahead and install this. Okay, so what I wanted to show you was that, okay, let's go back to our backlog. So this was now this is our sprint backlog. So we had our product backlog, and from there what we did that we added few items in our sprint. So this is our PT sprint 1. So this is our sprint, and that's what was shown in our sprint board as well. So we can see what is there. Okay, so now over here you can see in the beginning we had all the items in to do. I moved 2 of them in progress, which means that now these items are in progress. Maybe the developers have started working on it, so they are in progress. And let's say the third one also, we want to move it into progress. So it's very easy. All you have to do is just drag it over here. So these are basically different swim lanes, and whenever you have to move it to the next level, you just drag it to that column. So now in progress, we can see 3 items are there. One is still to do, which means that maybe the developers haven't started working on it. And this is what is discussed every day in the daily Scrum. This board is always there because if there is any issue, then we can identify earlier that, okay, maybe we are on day 6 or day 7 and still there are a lot of items in to do's, still a lot of items in progress, which means that with only 3 days left, maybe we'll not be able to finish it and complete all of them. So that's the main objective of daily Scrum, that every day the team is gathering for 10 to 15 minutes and reviewing the health of their sprint, that how many are we on track to finish all the items by the end of the sprint or no. If there are any blockers, then can we resolve those blockers within the sprint, or what we need to do. So that's the main purpose of having the daily stand-up meeting, which is really, really useful. Okay, so now let's see how to write a test case. So I've already written a sample test case just to see that how it looks. But let's write one test case now. Okay, so let's say that okay, let's do it from here. This is our project, and we are writing a test case. Okay, so now when we are writing the test case, first of all, let's have a look at this user story. Let's say we are writing a test case for this user story. Okay, so what this user story says, as a user, I want to calculate cost of valet parking so that I know the cost for one day. And we know that the cost for one day is $18. And the acceptance criteria is ensure the user is able to choose valet parking option, input entry date and time, input leaving date and time, calculate the valet parking cost for one day. Okay, so we will keep this user story in mind, and there can be multiple test cases for this one. Okay, so we will write one test case right now. Oh, where it is. Okay, I just want to open a new one so that we can also see this. Okay, we will use this one. All right, so this is our test case, and our summary is nothing else but our title, which we just discussed. So maybe we can do valet parking as a prefix, because that's what we said in our strong title recommendation. It should be relevant to what you are writing about, maybe a module, etc. So valet parking, and what the user story was, that as a user, we should be able to calculate the cost of parking for one day. User should be able to calculate parking cost for one day. So this is our title. So see, when you see the title, you will get an idea that, okay, what are you planning to do in this one? All right, so over here in description, we can say that user should be able to calculate parking cost for one day when the cost is £18 per day, right? Over here, you will see that we don't have a separate field for preconditions, etc. So, so right now, if we have any kind of preconditions, we can write it over here. We don't have another field for test environment as well. So maybe we can say that environment in which we will test this will be test. So like all the details which you can think of, and you can come back to this field as well and add things, you can add it over here. If there is anything you think that it's important for the test case, which we can't capture anywhere else, then you can write it in the description field. Okay, so we have written it over here. Then, okay, who will be the assignee? Maybe you can assign it to the tester. So of course, I will assume that the tester is writing it, but right now, of course, I'm logged in with my users, so it's showing mine. So who is the tester? Sabah. So we can assign it to her. Then yes, this print, then the reporter right now is mine. Attachment, if we have any kind of attachment which we want to attach it with, we can do that as well. This is very, very useful when we are executing our test, because if we are having any screenshot, then it's very important that we attach it over here. Okay, now this is quite important, and this is the linked issues, and this is what helps us in creating links, or I should say creating the traceability of what we are trying to do. So now we are writing the test case. This test case is an independent test case, but what we want to do is we want to link it to the user story which we are writing it for. So if you say linked issues, there are different things like relates to blocks, is blocked by clone, is cloned by duplicate. So we will be using whatever applies to our test case. So right now, maybe our issue is blocked because of another issue. So we will use that. But right now we want to link it to our requirement, our user story. So we will say this test case relates to, and over here we will write the number. So see, this is the one. As a user, I want to calculate cost of valet parking. So this is the one for which we are writing the test case. So we will select it over here and we will create. Okay, so now let's have a look. So this is showing our test case. Okay, you can see that it hasn't linked to our epic. So we can always go here and we can choose our epic, which is valet parking. And over here, see, now it's linked to that valet parking epic. So we have our project, we have our epic, we have our test case. This is the test case ID, which if we are using a spreadsheet, then we have to specify the test case ID. But over here, you don't need to do that because it will be auto-generated. It will be given a test ID. Okay, so this is the title or the summary of our test case. Then we have the description over here. Over here, we have also seen that it's linked to this user story, and this would be a two-way link. So for example, if we now go back to this user story and we refresh it, we should be able to see that test case which we just created. So we created this PAC 16. So let's have a look. See, so this was which I created as an example. So maybe we can just remove right now. Okay, so this is the one which we just created, and see, you can see that this is linked to the user story. So let's say that later on, if we want to just execute the tests which are linked to this user story, then we will have a list of test cases over here. So we don't need to go and find all the test cases, because maybe later on we have an issue only with this part, this user story, and we just want to execute the test cases first, which are actually linked to this user story. So this will help us with that. So over here, we can see the link to the user story, the test case. And if we see the test case over here, we can see that, okay, this test case was written for this user story. Okay, so now you can see that we have some basic information over here. We also have the creation date when it was updated, so we don't need to specify that. Who has written it, who is assigned to, that's also we don't need to write over here. But one key thing which is still missing, which we learned about, was that to write the test steps. Okay, so for that, you can see that okay, so this is the icon for Zephyr. So wherever you will see now this icon, like over here, these are basically associated with Zephyr. So these are added for Zephyr. So over here, there is one which says test details. So when we create our test case like this one, we can click on this, and what it will do, it will add the test details section for that test case, and it will have test step, test data, test result over here. Okay, so now let's write a test step. So And this is our parking calculator, the parking cost calculator, which I mentioned earlier. I also shared the URL earlier, so you can always refer back or you can note it down now. Okay, so now this is the test case. A test case is saying calculate the parking cost for 1 day. Okay, so when we are writing the test case, what we will do, we have to write the actions. So there are two ways. One is we can write it in the first step, go to this, right? And we can, there is no test data over here, so we will leave it blank and we can write the test result. User should be able to see the application. Parking cost application. Okay, so this can be our, there's no attachments. This can be our first step, right? So this is one way. Either we can capture this thing as our first step, or we could have also written it in our precondition as well, that the user should already be in our in that page. But I would prefer to do it over here, and the reason is because, let's say for any reason, this is the first step, and when you are accessing this URL, if there is any error on this page, then right away you will mark that step as failed. When you will execute it, you can mark this as failed, because then if you are not even able to access this page, then of course you can't carry on with your rest of the steps. Then like right away you can mark it as failed, and we'll get to know that this was the step where it was failed, right? Okay, so the first one would be, so now think about all the steps that if you are testing, if you're writing test case, what will be the steps you will follow? So first of all, of course, you need to go to that application. So you have written it over here. Okay, next what you will do. Of course, there are different parking lots. So you will select valet parking from the parking lot. Okay. Select, okay, select parking, choose parking lot. And in test data, it can be valet parking, because that's what you are selecting from that drop-down list. So choose parking lot, and what you will be choosing, valet parking. Result should be, user should be able to select valet parking option from the drop-down. Okay, so over here we will add this. Okay, so why we have added this step. So for example, if we have chosen valet parking, maybe they can't see valet parking option over here, right? So which means then again that would be failed, and they can't carry on with the rest of the steps. So this needs to be there. Or maybe when I select valet parking, I get any error over here. So I need to be careful, because we need to go in a flow. Okay, we have done this. Then the next one, what I will do, I will input entry date and time. Okay. Enter entry date and time. Okay, and now what would be the date and time? We will select from here. So let's say we are writing about today. So we can just copy this. I don't know if we can copy. Let's see. Yes, we can. So this would be the date, and the time would be, so we are doing 12 p.m. So this is the time and date we have selected. And then what should be the test result? User should be able to enter entry date and time. Okay, what's the next one? We have done this. Then the next one would be, please input leaving date and time. So again, we will enter, because we are calculating it for the day. So right now, of course, we will just do it maybe till night. Maybe I'm just doing it for 10 hours. So maybe 10 p.m. I want to do it for that. So I will go here and I will write enter leaving date and time. I will write the same day, and I am writing 10 p.m. Okay, so user should be able to enter leaving date and time. This one is done as well. So now we have chosen the parking lot, we have done this, and then at the end, what we have to do, we should be able to calculate, right? So we will write over here, click calculate button. So we don't have any test data for this step. And what are we expecting? User, or we can just say parking cost should be shown as, sorry, $18, right? Because that's what we are doing. Okay, so now over here, we are done with our first test case. Okay, so right now we are not doing the actual testing because, of course, I'm just showing it for understanding the test case better, but actually at this point the entire application is not ready yet, so we are not testing. We are just trying to understand and write the test cases, so we will not test it right now. Okay, so this is a very basic test case. And if we go back to our this requirement, this user story, we have to make sure that we are meeting the acceptance criteria. So the acceptance criteria is ensure the user is able to choose valet parking option. We covered this in our test step. Input entry date and time, we did that as well. Input leaving date and time, we did that, and calculate, which means the test case which we have just written, that should be the first and basic test which you will be testing, because first of all, when you are testing, your aim should be to see that the user story is doing as per specifications of the acceptance criteria, as it's specified in the acceptance criteria, because there can be many negative test cases you can do later on. But first of all, we need to be able to see that what was required, the minimum requirement was that this acceptance criteria is met. Is it doing that or not? So first of all, we will be doing that, and our test case which we just wrote exactly is doing that. Okay, now when you are done with this, then still you are thinking of valet parking cost calculation for a day. But now is the time to be creative. Come up with as many scenarios as you can, because what you need to do is you need to find if there is any defect in it as well. So now, for example, we have just chosen a time. So still we are calculating it for a day. You can write many other scenarios, like maybe you can choose a time from AM to AM, or you can then also do for different dates as well, like a date where it's still one day, but you can choose another date. Try to do something which is in the past, the date is in the past, how will that do? Or this is the time where you need to think about the boundary value analysis, which we studied in foundation certification, how to apply boundary analysis, because it says 1 day. So if you can just try a case which is slightly outside the boundary, then what happens then is it should be giving you the calculation should be more than $18, because $18 is only for 1 day. So this is the time you need to come up with different scenarios, and this is what is your assignment for next week, for this entire week. So now you know how to write test cases. It's okay if you can't install JIRA and Zephyr. It's perfectly fine. You can write test cases using the template which I have mentioned in a spreadsheet, and you can use this one scenario, not more scenarios. I just want you to write um, it for one scenario, which is like valet parking, and it should be calculated for 1 day. So please come up with different test cases and try to break this, try to, right now don't execute the testing, just think of the test cases, that what are the different scenarios you would like to test. It will include both positive and negative test cases. So you can send it over to me in a Word format or in an Excel spreadsheet. So it's up to you. If you want to do it in Jira Zephyr, that's absolutely fine as well. You can do anywhere, but please try this, because this is your opportunity to trying something hands-on if you are not already working in software testing. And this is how you will be testing when you will be working on any of your own project. So please do that in this week, and whenever you are done, do send me your test cases, and I will review the test cases, and then of course we can discuss that further in our next session as well. Okay, so this is how we write a test case. So now if you go to this test case and you see all the test details, you can see all the test step, test data, test result. Means that now we are ready with our test case, and whenever we have to execute, then we will go ahead and we will execute this test case. And this is what we will be covering in our next session. So next session is about test execution. So if you have any question for today's session, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, we are done for the day. Let me know if you have any questions, and please make sure that you are writing your test cases and sending me over, because that was the main objective of doing this live training, that you are also working on a project. You get an opportunity to work on a project if you haven't started working in software testing field yet, because before you are starting on a project, then you get to know that how we test a project, and this is your opportunity to write test cases. Okay, so any questions? Okay, Denmark has asked, in the assignment, in the test cases, it also included test steps or just title and description? No, Denmark, you have to write the test steps, because a test case is incomplete without the test steps. So it's up to you. I don't know if you have already installed JIRA for practice. If yes, then I would recommend you to install Zephyr as well. It's free for 30 days. If you haven't done that, then just use a spreadsheet or a Word document. I really don't mind. I just want that, okay, we have this user story. For this user story, you have the access to the parking calculator as well. So just play around and think of different test steps. So you can write it like different titles and then different steps as well, because the steps and the test data will vary depending on how many test cases you are writing. Okay, Rupal is asking, can you give an example of how to write test case using BVA? Yeah, sure, Rupal. Okay, so let's say that okay, so what is our test case, a user story about. A user story is that we want to calculate the parking cost for 1 day. Okay, so 1 day is which is our range. So in boundary value analysis, what we have to do, we have to try to go beyond our boundary, beyond our range. So if it's 1 day, then maybe over here, you can give it 2 days or maybe 1 day, which means that now this is your boundary value analysis that you want to calculate it only for 1 day. And if it's for more than 1 day, then the cost which you will calculate shouldn't be 18, it should be more than that, because that's what the user story is saying you. So this is one example. Okay, the other example of boundary value analysis can be that if I'm testing, if I'm using the parking calculator anywhere, which means that, okay, if I have gone there right now, then it's showing me today's date and I'm entering that, then whether the system is allowing me to use any date in the past. So 17th has already passed, right? So I will never go and buy a parking ticket for a date which has already passed. So that's also beyond our range of date. So that would be another example of a BVA test case that try to get a parking ticket for a date which was in the past, and then calculate and then see that how it happens. Try not to execute the test case because we are not doing test execution. So that's why I'm not pressing calculate. But if this would be one scenario which is coming in my mind right now, that okay, if I want to enter a date of past and then try to calculate, it should give me an error. It should give me a message that, okay, you can't select a date which was in past. Or maybe over here also, it should maybe disable all the dates from the past. So there are many things. So these are the things. First of all, think about the positive scenarios. Always start with what is there for based on your acceptance criteria. Then think about other positive scenarios which still applies to the same user story, same condition, and then move out to the to outside the range, that outside your boundaries. Is that clear? Okay, that's good. Okay, thanks, Rupal. Is there any other scenario, any other thing you want to ask, any other question? So when you will start writing test cases, trust me, that would be really, really interesting. I think this is the most interesting part of testing because this is a very creative phase where you can come up with different scenarios. Just think that you are the user and you will be using this application, and just try different scenarios. Okay, so Rupal is asking one example for equivalence partitioning. Okay, so Rupal, what is equivalence partitioning? Equivalence partitioning is something which you need first for boundary value analysis, because that's how you define your equivalence partitioning. So equivalence partitioning, it depends that over here, of course, it's your range. And right now for this scenario, your range is 1 day, because I understand that what you are thinking of equivalence partitioning based on maybe the questions which you have done earlier for foundation certification, let's say. Okay, so in that, maybe it would have said that, okay, if it's valet parking, then the cost would be this per day. If it's for 5 hours, then this day. Then, okay, let's say if we are just testing valet parking, keep aside this user story. Let's not think about this user story. If we are just thinking of valet parking and we have this data, then based on that, our equivalence partition, our classes would be of something for 5 hours, less than 5 hours, and then from 0 to 24 hours, which means 1 day. So our range would be from 0 to 24, and in that our equivalence classes would be 0 to 4, which is less than 5, then 5 onwards. So this would be our equivalence partitioning, and this would be our range. And then outside our range would be, which I said that more than 1 day or in the back date, etc. That would be our negative scenarios, which will be our edge cases. Is that clear? Okay, that's good. Anything else? Okay, no more questions, that's fine. So when you will be writing your test cases, then you might come up with more questions, and just feel free to contact me in the group. And whenever you are done with your test cases, I would be looking forward to see your test cases. So please share it with me. If you have any questions, ask in the group. And then I will see you in the next session next Sunday. Till then, take care. Bye.